12 years ago, on a stormy night that seemed to mirror the chaos inside his family's home, a little boy named Daniel was dragged to the door by his own parents, shoved out into the cold, and told he was no longer welcome. He had been a quiet, thoughtful child, always yearning for affection, but to his ambitious and materialistic parents, he was nothing but a burden, a mistake that had ruined their glittering plans. So when an opportunity came to rid themselves of responsibility, they didn't hesitate, slamming the door in his tear-streaked face, ignoring his tiny fists pounding and his cries echoing in the rain. And that night would become the scar that shaped him forever. But fate sent him an unlikely guardian angel, a woman named Margaret, the family's nanny, who, instead of turning away like the others, gathered him into her arms, wrapped him in her shawl, and whispered that he was not alone, that he was worth loving. And from that moment on, she became both mother and father, mentor and protector, sacrificing her own meager life savings to raise him, moving from city to city to shield him from the shadows of his past, while Daniel grew in silence, his pain transforming not into bitterness but into an unrelenting fire, a determination to prove that he was not the discarded child his parents believed. And under Margaret's guidance, he pursued education with a hunger that astonished teachers, working odd jobs late into the night, studying by candlelight, refusing to be crushed by poverty, and slowly, through grit and resilience, he carved out a path to success, first earning scholarships, then internships, then finally launching a business venture that seemed impossible for someone of his background. But Daniel had inherited his parents' cunning and ambition. Only he paired it with compassion and a drive to never let another child feel the abandonment he had endured. And by his mid-20s, Daniel had become a name whispered in boardrooms, a young man with influence, wealth, and vision, though he kept his true identity hidden, never once seeking his parents, until one day, after 12 long years, he decided it was time, not out of vengeance alone but out of a need to close the wound they had left festering. And so he returned to the city where he had been discarded, arriving not as the frail boy they had cast away, but as a man surrounded by quiet power, stepping out of a sleek black car with Margaret by his side, still the same nanny who had once shielded him with nothing but love. And when the community saw him walk through the old gates of his parents' mansion, rumors spread like wildfire, because the house that had once belonged to his parents was now being foreclosed, debts crushing them, their former friends abandoning them. And at a gathering where desperate investors and creditors waited for resolution, Daniel stepped forward, his presence commanding silence, his parents staring in disbelief as if they were seeing a ghost, their mouths opening but no words forming, because the boy they had rejected stood before them not just alive, but triumphant. And with a calm voice that cut through the air, he revealed his name, his story, and the truth they had buried, reminding everyone how he had been thrown out like trash, how a woman with no wealth had shown him the love they never could. And as the room buzzed with shock, Daniel did the unthinkable. He bought the mansion, cleared the debts, but not to save his parents out of love. Rather, he gifted the deed to Margaret, declaring her the rightful owner of the house she had once served in as a forgotten nanny, elevating her from servant to mistress, shocking the entire community, and leaving his parents trembling, humiliated, and begging for mercy. But Daniel's mercy was not what they expected, for he told them he bore no hatred, only pity, yet he would never allow them to hurt him again. And while he promised they would not starve, he stripped them of the power and vanity they had worshipped, forcing them to live humbly in a modest apartment, while Margaret, the woman who had saved him, now lived in comfort, honored and respected as she deserved. And Daniel used his wealth to open orphanages and scholarships, channeling his fortune into children who, like him, had been abandoned, turning his pain into hope for others. And as news outlets spread the story, the community hailed him as both ruthless and merciful, a man who returned not to destroy but to redefine justice, proving that family is not bound by blood but by love and loyalty. And though his parents wept at night, regretting the moment they had shut that door 12 years ago, it was too late, because Daniel had built a life where their approval meant nothing, and the world watched as the boy once cast aside walked hand in hand with his nanny into a future brighter than they had ever imagined for him, leaving behind a lesson so shocking and unforgettable that it echoed far beyond their city, that sometimes the greatest revenge is not destruction but success, and the greatest triumph is choosing who truly deserves to stand beside you when you return home at last.